The autumn air carries the scent of wood smoke and damp leaves as darkness falls earlier each evening. Carved pumpkins flicker on doorsteps, their crooked grins casting dancing shadows across October yards. Children's laughter echoes through twilight streets, mixed with the rustle of costumes and the promise of candy. But this night, this celebration we call Halloween, carries echoes far older than plastic masks and chocolate bars. Did you know that people have been carving scary faces into vegetables for over 1,000 years? Or that the tradition of wearing costumes was once believed to genuinely protect you from wandering spirits? Tonight on Midnight Deep Dive, we're peeling back the layers of one of the world's most beloved holidays, discovering how ancient Celtic fire festivals transformed into the candy-fueled celebration that draws over 170 million Americans to participate each year. So settle in, let the autumn night embrace you, close your eyes, and let yourself drift peacefully as we uncover the ancient mysteries and modern magic woven into this most enchanting of holidays. Long before Halloween existed, before Christianity spread across Europe, before the Romans conquered the Celtic lands, there was Samhain. This ancient festival marked the end of the harvest season and the beginning of winter, a time the Celts associated with death and darkness. Picture yourself standing on a hillside in ancient Ireland 2,000 years ago as the sun sets on the last day of October. The air grows cold quickly now, and you can see your breath in the gathering darkness. Around you, your community has gathered, and in the distance, you can see the great ceremonial bonfires being lit on neighboring hills, their flames reaching toward the darkening sky like prayers made of light. The Celts divided their year into two main seasons, the light half and the dark half. Samhain represented the hinge between these two worlds, the moment when one year died and another was born. This wasn't just a change on a calendar. It was understood as a rupture in the fabric of reality itself. The Celts believed that on this night, the boundary between the world of the living and the world of the dead became thin, permeable, like a veil of gauze that you could almost see through if you looked carefully enough. This thinning of the veil wasn't necessarily something to celebrate. It was something to be managed carefully, with proper rituals and respect. The spirits of the dead could return to visit their living relatives, yes, but other, more malevolent entities might also slip through. The Aushi, supernatural beings from Celtic mythology, could move more freely between their realm and ours. These weren't friendly fairy tale creatures. They were powerful, unpredictable forces that could bless or curse, heal or harm, depending on how they were treated. The great bonfires that blazed across the Celtic lands served multiple sacred purposes. The Druids, Celtic priests who served as religious leaders, teachers, and judges, would lead the ceremonies. They would light these fires using friction, creating sacred flames that were believed to have protective and purifying powers. Cattle would be driven between two bonfires to cleanse them before winter, and people would carry flames from these sacred fires to relight their home hearths, which had been extinguished for the festival. This practice connected every household to the communal sacred fire, creating a web of protection across the land. Families would prepare for Samhain by setting places at their tables for deceased relatives, leaving offerings of food and drink. This wasn't morbid or frightening in their worldview. It was an act of love and remembrance. They would leave doors unbolted so that the spirits of loved ones could enter and warm themselves by the fire. But to protect themselves from less welcome spiritual visitors, some Celts would wear costumes and masks, disguising themselves to confuse any malevolent spirits that might be wandering about. The festival also involved divination practices, as this liminal time when the veil was thin was considered ideal for seeing into the future. Young women would perform rituals to discover the identity of their future husbands. Nuts would be thrown into fires, and their behavior in the flames would predict the year ahead. Apple peels would be thrown over shoulders, their shapes on the ground supposedly forming the initials of future spouses. These practices blended the practical concerns of agricultural communities with their spiritual beliefs, mixing predictions about weather and crops with personal fortunes. Archaeological evidence suggests that Samhain festivals might have taken place at significant sites like the Hill of Tara in Ireland, where the ancient kings held court. These gatherings weren't just religious ceremonies. They were also important social events, where communities would come together to trade, settle disputes, arrange marriages, and strengthen bonds before the isolating winter months ahead. The timing of Samhain reflected the agricultural realities of Celtic life. By the end of October, all crops had been harvested and stored. Livestock that couldn't be fed through winter had been slaughtered and their meat preserved. The visible world was dying, plants withered, leaves fell, and darkness claimed more of each day. In this context, the idea that this was also when the dead drew near made intuitive sense. The natural world itself seemed to be crossing a threshold from life to death. The Celts understood that this transitional time required balance and reciprocity. They made offerings not just from fear, but from a sense of maintaining relationships with the other world. Just as they would offer hospitality to living visitors, they offered it to spiritual ones. This worldview saw the supernatural not as separate from daily life, but as intimately woven through it, with certain times and places where that weaving became more visible and required more careful attention. As Christianity spread across the Celtic lands in the early medieval period, the Church faced a challenge that it had encountered many times before. What to do about deeply rooted pagan festivals that people were reluctant to abandon? The solution, as it had been with other pagan celebrations, was not to eliminate these festivals entirely, but to transform them, to pour new wine into old vessels, as it were. This process of Christianization created something entirely new, a hybrid celebration that would eventually become Halloween as we know it. In the year 609, Pope Boniface IV dedicated the Pantheon in Rome to the Virgin Mary and all Christian martyrs, establishing a feast day to honor them. Initially celebrated in May, this feast was later moved to November 1st by Pope Gregory III in the 8th century, possibly to coincide with Samhain and provide a Christian alternative to the pagan festival. This became All Saints' Day, also known as All Hallows' Day. The evening before, October 31st, naturally became All Hallows' Eve, which would eventually contract into the word Halloween. The Church added another day to this period of remembrance. November 2nd became All Souls' Day, dedicated to praying for all departed souls, particularly those in purgatory. This 3-day period, collectively known as All Hallowtide, created a Christian framework for practices that had ancient pagan roots. The focus remained on death and the souls of the departed, but now filtered through Christian theology rather than Celtic cosmology. Medieval Europeans blended these new Christian observances with older traditions in ways that must have seemed perfectly natural to them. The practice of souling emerged, where poor people would go door to door on All Souls' Day, offering to pray for the dead in exchange for soul cakes, small round cakes often marked with a cross. This practice contained echoes of offerings made to appease wandering spirits, now transformed into a Christian act of charity. The more soul cakes someone gave away, the more prayers they would receive for their deceased loved ones, supposedly helping those souls progress more quickly through purgatory. In Scotland and Ireland, the practice of guising developed, where young people would dress in costumes and go door to door. But instead of offering prayers, they would perform songs, poems, jokes, or tricks in exchange for food or coins. The costumes often represented supernatural creatures or the souls of the dead, maintaining that older tradition of disguising oneself during this spiritually dangerous time. The performances were important. This wasn't just begging, but a reciprocal exchange of entertainment for reward. Medieval churches would hold special services on All Hallows' Eve, often continuing late into the night. Bells would toll for the dead, and in some communities, people would walk in processions carrying candles or lanterns, symbolically lighting the way for souls. The line between the sacred and the social blurred beautifully during these medieval celebrations, with solemn religious observance giving way to community feasting and merrymaking. The medieval period also saw the development of mumming plays, folk performances that took place around All Hallows' Eve and other significant times of year. These plays often featured stock characters including a fool, a hero, and a villain, and many involved themes of death and resurrection. Performers would travel from house to house or village to village, their faces blackened with soot or hidden behind crude masks, blurring the boundaries between entertainment and ritual, between the living performers and the supernatural characters they portrayed. In medieval England, All Hallows' Eve became associated with bonfires, continuing the ancient Celtic tradition, but now under Christian auspices. Communities would build great fires to ward off evil spirits and to symbolize the light of Christian faith pushing back the darkness. Young people would jump over the dying embers for luck, and the ashes would be spread on fields to ensure good crops in the coming year. These practices made perfect sense to medieval farmers, for whom religion and agriculture were inseparably linked aspects of life. The medieval church was remarkably pragmatic about incorporating older traditions. Rather than condemning all aspects of Samhain as pagan wickedness, church leaders recognized that people needed their festivals, their moments of communal celebration that marked the passage of time and the changing seasons. By Christianizing these celebrations rather than eliminating them, the church ensured its teachings would be accepted more readily, while also preserving traditions that connected people to their ancestors and their land. Interestingly, the celebration of All Hallows' Eve wasn't uniform across medieval Europe. In some regions, it remained a solemn religious observance with little festivity. In others, particularly in Celtic regions where Samhain traditions were strongest, the celebration retained more of its pre-Christian character despite the Christian overlay. This regional variation would persist for centuries, with different communities developing their own unique blend of sacred and secular, solemn and festive, ancient and contemporary practices. The flickering face of a jack-o'-lantern might be Halloween's most iconic image, but this glowing guardian has a history far stranger and darker than most people realize. The tradition of carving faces into vegetables and lighting them from within stretches back centuries, and the journey from Irish turnips to American pumpkins tells a fascinating story about immigration, adaptation, and the evolution of folklore. The name jack-o'-lantern comes from an old Irish folk tale about a man named Stingy Jack, a character who appears in various forms across Irish storytelling traditions. The most common version goes something like this. Jack was a clever but miserly man who managed to trick the devil not once but twice. The first time, Jack convinced the devil to climb a tree to pick some fruit, then quickly carved crosses into the bark, trapping the devil up in the branches. Jack made the devil promise not to claim his soul before allowing him to come down. Years later, when Jack died, he was turned away from heaven because of his sinful life, but when he tried to enter hell, the devil, still bound by his promise, turned him away as well. Taking pity on Jack as he was sent off to wander the dark world between heaven and hell, the devil tossed him an ember from the fires of hell to light his way. Jack placed the ember inside a hollowed-out turnip and has been condemned to roam the earth ever since. In Ireland and Scotland, people began carving faces into turnips, potatoes, and beets, placing candles or embers inside them to create lanterns. These weren't the cheerful, grinning faces we often see today. They were grotesque, frightening visages meant to represent lost souls or to ward off evil spirits. The tradition held that placing one of these carved lanterns in a window or by a door would frighten away Stingy Jack and other wandering spirits, protecting the household during the spiritually dangerous time around Samhain. Creating these lanterns was no simple task. If you've ever tried to carve a turnip, you'll know they're much harder and denser than pumpkins, requiring significant effort to hollow out. The resulting lanterns were smaller and produced a dimmer, more eerie light than modern jack-o'-lanterns. They would be carried through the streets by geysers, their flickering faces bobbing through the darkness, or placed in windows where their grotesque expressions would startle passers-by. Some regions developed traditions of young people using these lanterns to play pranks, hiding in shadows and surprising neighbors with their ghostly glowing faces. The transformation from turnips to pumpkins happened when Irish and Scottish immigrants brought their Halloween traditions to North America in the 19th century. In the New World, they discovered that pumpkins, native to North America and far more abundant than turnips, were perfect for carving. Pumpkins were larger, easier to hollow out, and their bright orange color added an extra festive element. The practice of pumpkin carving caught on quickly, and by the late 1800s, jack-o'-lanterns made from pumpkins had become a standard part of American Halloween celebrations. The symbolism of jack-o'-lanterns operated on multiple levels in traditional belief. The light inside represented the souls of the dead or the protective power of the living. The carved face served as a mask, a false front that could confuse or frighten spiritual entities. The threshold placement on doorsteps or windowsills marked the boundary between inside and outside, between the protected domestic space and the wild, spiritually dangerous world beyond. As Halloween became more commercialized in the 20th century, jack-o'-lantern designs began to shift. The scary, grotesque faces gave way to more playful, friendly expressions as Halloween transformed from a night of genuine spiritual concern into a children's holiday focused on fun and treats. Pumpkin carving became a family activity, with parents and children working together to create jack-o'-lanterns that were more cute than frightening. Pattern books and later internet templates provided increasingly elaborate designs, transforming pumpkin carving into a folk art form. The jack-o'-lantern tradition also inspired the development of other Halloween decorations. Paper lanterns, plastic light-up pumpkins, and eventually elaborate animatronic decorations all trace their lineage back to those original carved turnips in Ireland. The basic concept remained the same, creating a face that glowed from within, a presence that was both decorative and symbolically protective. In some communities, jack-o'-lantern carving developed into competitive events and artistic showcases. Elaborate sculptures carved from giant pumpkins can weigh hundreds of pounds and feature intricate, detailed designs that take hours or even days to complete. These modern artistic jack-o'-lanterns maintain a connection to that original folk tradition, while pushing the form into new creative territories. The scientific reality of why pumpkins are so perfect for carving relates to their biology. Pumpkins are composed mostly of water, with a relatively thin wall of firm flesh surrounding a hollow cavity filled with seeds and pulp. This structure makes them easy to hollow out while maintaining enough structural integrity to hold complex carved designs. The bright orange color comes from high levels of beta-carotene, the same compound that gives carrots their color. When lit from within, the thin walls of carved pumpkin allow light to pass through, creating that characteristic warm glow. Step into a Victorian parlor on Halloween night, and you'd find yourself in a world of romance, mystery, and playful superstition. The gas lamps burn low, casting flickering shadows across walls papered in rich patterns. Mirrors have been strategically placed around the room, and a large basin filled with water sits in the corner, apples bobbing on its surface. Young women in their finest dresses gather around, giggling nervously as they prepare to peek into their romantic futures. The Victorians transformed Halloween from a harvest festival with spiritual overtones into something altogether more social and sentimental, focusing particularly on love divination and fortune-telling games. The Victorian era saw a remarkable romanticization of death, mystery, and the supernatural. This was the age of spiritualism, when seances became fashionable parlor entertainment and mediums claimed to communicate with the dead in drawing rooms across America and Britain. Halloween fit perfectly into this cultural fascination with the otherworldly. But the Victorians softened its scarier aspects, turning it into an occasion for parties, games, and particularly for young people to explore romantic possibilities under the guise of supernatural fortune-telling. One of the most popular Victorian Halloween games was the mirror ritual. A young woman would sit in front of a mirror at midnight, holding a candle and eating an apple. If she looked carefully into the mirror while performing this ritual, she would supposedly see the face of her future husband looking back over her shoulder. The bravest girls would perform this ritual in complete darkness, except for the single candle, turning it into a test of courage as much as a glimpse into the future. The psychological tension of sitting in near darkness, waiting for a face to appear in the mirror, would often result in startled screams and nervous laughter. Apple-based divination games were particularly popular, drawing on the fruit's ancient associations with love and fertility. In apple bobbing, participants would try to catch floating apples using only their mouths, and which apple you caught would supposedly predict something about your future spouse. Sometimes the apples were marked with initials or had predictions attached to them. The game was both ridiculous and thrilling, with participants emerging wet-faced and laughing, the formal propriety of Victorian society temporarily suspended in the spirit of Halloween fun. Another apple-based tradition involved peeling an apple in one long strip, then throwing the peel over your left shoulder. The shape the peel made when it landed would supposedly form the initial of your future spouse's name. Young women would crowd around the fallen peel, interpreting its curves and bends, arguing good-naturedly about whether that curve was really a J, or perhaps an L. The silliness of the practice didn't diminish its appeal. Part of the fun was the ritualized nature of the activity and the social bonding it created. Nut roasting provided another popular divination method. Young people would name nuts after potential romantic partners, then place them near the fire. If the nut roasted quietly, it predicted a peaceful relationship. If it popped or jumped, it suggested a tumultuous romance. If two nuts roasted side by side stayed close together, it meant the couple would be faithful, but if they jumped apart, separation was in their future. The unpredictable behavior of heating nuts kept participants engaged and entertained, while maintaining the pleasant fiction of fortune-telling. The Victorian fascination with spiritualism directly influenced Halloween celebrations. Some parties would include actual seances, with participants sitting around a table in darkened rooms, holding hands and calling on spirits to communicate through table rapping or automatic writing. Ouija boards, commercially produced starting in the 1890s, became popular Halloween party entertainment. While modern Americans might find this mixing of parlor games and supernatural communication strange, Victorians saw no contradiction. For them, Halloween was precisely the right time to blur the boundaries between the living and the dead. Victorian Halloween parties also featured elaborate decorations that set the mood for these supernatural entertainments. Corn stalks would be arranged in corners, autumn leaves scattered on tables, and in more elaborate parties, entire rooms would be transformed into harvest scenes or spooky grottos. The Victorians loved themed parties, and Halloween provided the perfect excuse for theatrical decoration and costuming. Games of skill and chance beyond romantic divination were also popular. Snap-apple involved hanging apples from strings and trying to bite them while they swung. Flower games required participants to slice away portions of a mound of flour without collapsing a coin or candy placed on top. These games combined physical challenge with social entertainment, giving partygoers opportunities to laugh at themselves and others in a spirit of good-natured fun. The Victorian era also saw the beginning of Halloween literature and poetry becoming popular entertainment. Magazines would publish ghost stories and Halloween-themed poems in their October editions. Robert Burns' poem, Halloween, written in 1785 but popularized during the Victorian era, detailed Scottish Halloween traditions and divination practices. Reading such works aloud became a Halloween party tradition, with the best readers adding dramatic emphasis and spooky intonation. What's particularly interesting about Victorian Halloween celebrations is how they transformed a festival with ancient roots in fear and spiritual danger into something primarily focused on romance and social bonding. The Victorians kept the supernatural elements but defanged them, turning ghosts and spirits into props for party games rather than genuine sources of concern. This transformation would set the stage for Halloween's eventual evolution into a children's holiday in the 20th century, though some of those Victorian romantic divination games would continue in various forms for decades to come. The Halloween we celebrate today is fundamentally an American creation, born from a remarkable melting pot of traditions brought by immigrants and adapted to American circumstances. In the mid-19th century, Halloween barely existed as a celebration in most of America, but by the mid-20th century, it had become one of the nation's most popular holidays. This transformation tells a fascinating story about immigration, cultural adaptation, and American commercialism. The great waves of Irish immigration in the 1840s, driven by the devastating potato famine, brought Halloween traditions to American shores in significant numbers for the first time. These immigrants carried with them memories of Samhain celebrations, of jack-o'-lanterns carved from turnips, of guising and divination games. In Irish-American communities, particularly in the northeastern United States, Halloween celebrations began to take root, blending Irish customs with local American practices. Scottish immigrants contributed their own traditions, including the practice of guising, where children would dress in costume and perform for treats. This tradition would eventually evolve into trick-or-treating, though that transformation would take several more decades. German immigrants brought customs related to harvest celebrations, while immigrants from other European countries added their own variations on autumn festivals and supernatural beliefs. Early American Halloween celebrations varied significantly by region and community. In some areas, Halloween remained a relatively minor observance, mainly celebrated by immigrant communities. In others, particularly where Irish and Scottish populations were concentrated, Halloween parties and celebrations became significant social events. These early American Halloween celebrations often featured the Victorian-style parlor games and divination practices we discussed earlier, combined with more boisterous outdoor activities like pranking and mischief. The early 20th century saw Halloween beginning to spread beyond immigrant communities into mainstream American culture, but this spread came with growing pains. Halloween mischief escalated from harmless pranks to genuine vandalism in many communities. Young people would overturn outhouses, soap windows, block streets with farm equipment, and generally cause havoc. By the 1930s, Halloween vandalism had become such a serious problem in many American cities that civic leaders began looking for ways to redirect youthful energy into more constructive activities. The solution came in the form of organized community Halloween celebrations. Towns and cities began hosting official Halloween parties, parades, and events designed to keep young people supervised and engaged in approved activities. Schools got involved, incorporating Halloween into their autumn programming. This taming of Halloween represented a significant shift, transforming it from a somewhat anarchic folk celebration into a more controlled, community-oriented holiday. The practice we know as trick-or-treating emerged gradually from several different traditions. The older practices of souling and guising provided templates, but modern trick-or-treating, as a widespread American practice, didn't really take off until the 1940s and 1950s. Several factors contributed to this development. The baby boom created large numbers of children in suburban neighborhoods perfect for trick-or-treating. The post-war economy provided families with disposable income to spend on candy and costumes. And perhaps most importantly, the development of suburban neighborhoods with their sidewalks, street lights, and clusters of family homes created an ideal environment for the practice. The phrase trick or treat itself has murky origins, but it began appearing in American publications in the 1930s. The trick part referenced older traditions of Halloween mischief, while the treat represented a bargain. Give us something good and we won't play pranks on you. This playful threat was more joke than genuine warning in most contexts, but it maintained a connection to Halloween's mischievous past even as the holiday became increasingly commercialized and child-focused. Early trick-or-treating involved homemade costumes and treats. Children might receive homemade popcorn balls, cookies, apples, nuts, or small toys along with store-bought candy. The practice had a neighborly, community-building quality to it. Householders would know many of the children who came to their doors, and the activity strengthened neighborhood bonds while giving children a safe, structured way to participate in Halloween celebrations. The candy industry recognized the commercial potential of Halloween and began actively marketing their products for the holiday. By the 1950s, candy manufacturers had successfully positioned their products as the ideal Halloween treat, gradually displacing homemade goodies. This shift would accelerate in later decades, particularly after safety scares about tampered Halloween treats, whether real or imagined, made parents wary of anything not commercially packaged. Regional variations in Halloween celebrations persisted even as the holiday became more standardized. In some areas, trick-or-treaters were expected to perform tricks, songs, or jokes to earn their treats, maintaining that older tradition of reciprocal exchange. In others, simply showing up in costume was sufficient. The hours for trick-or-treating, the appropriate age range for participants, and local customs around Halloween decorating all varied by community, creating a patchwork of different Halloween experiences across America. The transformation of Halloween into a major American holiday also involved significant commercialization. Costume manufacturers began producing ready-made Halloween costumes for children, initially focusing on classic characters like ghosts, witches, and black cats, but eventually expanding to include popular culture characters from movies, television, and comic books. Greeting card companies added Halloween to their seasonal lineup. Retailers created elaborate Halloween displays and seasonal departments. By the 1970s and 1980s, Halloween had become big business in America. The holiday generated hundreds of millions of dollars in retail sales annually, a figure that would grow exponentially in subsequent decades. This commercialization sometimes drew criticism from those who felt it undermined Halloween's folk traditions and authentic cultural roots. But it also ensured the holiday's continued popularity and evolution. Why do we enjoy being scared? It's a peculiar aspect of human psychology that we actively seek out experiences designed to frighten us, particularly around Halloween. We pay money to enter haunted houses where strangers will jump out at us. We watch horror movies that make us cover our eyes. We tell ghost stories specifically intended to give us chills. Understanding the neuroscience behind this paradoxical pleasure helps explain why Halloween's scary elements are so appealing rather than off-putting. When you encounter something frightening, your brain's amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure deep in the temporal lobe, immediately springs into action. The amygdala serves as your brain's threat detection system, constantly scanning your environment for potential dangers. When it identifies something scary, it triggers a cascade of physiological responses collectively known as the fight or flight response. Your heart rate increases, pumping blood to major muscle groups. Your breathing quickens, providing more oxygen. Your pupils dilate, improving vision. Stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline flood your system, creating that characteristic jolt of fear. Here's where it gets interesting. Your brain can distinguish between real threats and pretend ones. When you're in a haunted house or watching a scary movie, part of your brain recognizes that you're not in actual danger. You're experiencing what researchers call threat simulation in a safe environment. This allows you to enjoy the physiological rush of fear, the excitement of elevated heart rate and heightened alertness, without the genuine terror that accompanies real danger. The neurotransmitter dopamine plays a crucial role in why scary experiences can be pleasurable. Dopamine is often called the reward chemical because it's released during pleasurable experiences. But dopamine also increases during exciting or stimulating experiences, including frightening ones. When you successfully navigate a scary situation, even an artificial one, your brain releases dopamine as a reward for surviving the perceived threat. This creates a sense of accomplishment and pleasure that can be genuinely addictive. Research has shown that personality traits influence how much people enjoy scary experiences. People high in sensation-seeking traits, those who generally enjoy novel and intense experiences, tend to love Halloween scares more than those who are more cautious by nature. The hormone testosterone also plays a role. Higher testosterone levels correlate with greater enjoyment of frightening stimuli, which may partly explain why Halloween horror attractions often appeal more to teenagers and young adults. The phenomenon of excitation transfer helps explain why scary experiences can be particularly thrilling. This psychological principle suggests that arousal from one source can intensify emotions from another source. The physiological arousal from fear, with its racing heart and quick breathing, can transfer to feelings of excitement, exhilaration, or even romance. This is why scary dates, like horror movies or haunted houses, are so popular. The fear arousal can intensify positive feelings toward your companion. Social factors significantly enhance scary experiences. Research consistently shows that people enjoy frightening entertainment more when experiencing it with others rather than alone. This social dimension activates brain regions involved in empathy and social bonding. When you and your friends scream together at a haunted house, you're creating shared memories and strengthening social bonds. The communal nature of Halloween celebrations taps into this social aspect of fear enjoyment. The psychological concept of benign masochism provides another framework for understanding Halloween's appeal. This term, coined by psychologist Paul Rozin, describes the enjoyment humans derive from initially negative experiences that we learn are actually safe. Just as we might enjoy spicy food despite the pain signals, we can enjoy fear experiences despite the discomfort, because we learn that they're ultimately harmless. Halloween provides structured opportunities for this benign masochism through controlled scary experiences. There may even be evolutionary explanations for our attraction to scary entertainment. Throughout human history, individuals who could effectively practice responding to threats in safe contexts might have developed better threat response skills for real dangers. Scary stories, frightening rituals, and mock dangers could serve as training simulations, helping people prepare psychologically for genuine threats. Halloween's scary elements might connect to this ancient practice of threat rehearsal. The aesthetic of horror, what researchers call horror aesthetics, also plays a role in Halloween's appeal. Humans have a tendency toward morbid curiosity, an interest in death, danger, and the macabre that exists alongside our fear of these things. Halloween provides a socially sanctioned outlet for this curiosity, allowing us to explore dark themes and imagery without crossing into genuinely disturbing territory. The artistic styling of Halloween decorations, costumes, and entertainment transforms potentially disturbing content into something approachable and even beautiful. Individual differences in how people process fear extend to physiological responses. Some people's amygdalae are more or less reactive to frightening stimuli, meaning the same scary stimulus will produce different intensity responses in different individuals. This explains why one person might find a haunted house terrifying, while their friend finds it only mildly startling. Understanding these individual differences can help people choose Halloween experiences that match their personal comfort levels. The concept of voluntary fear experiences has become an area of active research in psychology and neuroscience. Scientists are discovering that these experiences might have genuine benefits beyond simple entertainment. Controlled exposure to fear in safe environments can help people build confidence, develop coping strategies, and even reduce anxiety in their daily lives. Halloween, with its structured scary experiences, provides annual opportunities for this type of beneficial fear exposure. There's something magical about putting on a costume. The moment you don the mask, fasten the cape, or apply the makeup, something shifts inside you. You walk differently, talk differently, embody a character or concept that isn't your everyday self. This transformative power of costumes lies at the heart of Halloween's appeal, and the psychology behind it reveals fascinating insights into identity, creativity, and human nature. The tradition of wearing costumes on Halloween, as we've explored, has ancient roots in the Celtic practice of disguising oneself to confuse wandering spirits. But the psychological experience of costuming goes much deeper than simple disguise. Psychologists have identified what they call enclothed cognition, the systematic influence that clothes have on the wearer's psychological processes. When you put on a costume, you're not just changing your appearance. You're potentially changing your behavior, thoughts, and feelings. Research studies have demonstrated this effect in various contexts. In one famous experiment, participants who wore a white lab coat performed better on attention-demanding tasks, but only when they believed the coat belonged to a doctor. The clothing itself had power, but that power was enhanced by the symbolic meaning attached to it. Similarly, Halloween costumes carry symbolic meanings that can influence how wearers behave. Put on a superhero costume, and you might feel more confident and powerful. Dress as a witch, and you might feel more mysterious and mischievous. Children's Halloween costumes serve important developmental functions. For young children, costume play allows them to explore different identities and roles in safe, structured ways. A shy child might choose a fierce lion costume, experiencing the thrill of embodying strength and courage. An energetic child might dress as a gentle fairy, exploring nurturing and magical aspects of themselves. These costumed explorations help children develop flexibility in their self-concepts and practice being different versions of themselves. The evolution of Halloween costumes throughout the 20th century tells interesting stories about American culture and values. Early commercially produced costumes featured traditional Halloween characters: ghosts, witches, black cats, skeletons. By the 1950s and 1960s, popular culture began influencing costume choices, with children dressing as cowboys, astronauts, and television characters. This shift reflected Halloween's transformation from a holiday rooted in folklore to one increasingly influenced by media and entertainment. The rise of licensed character costumes in the latter half of the 20th century represented a significant shift in Halloween culture. Children could now become their favorite movie heroes, cartoon characters, or video game personalities. This commercialization concerned some cultural critics who felt it moved Halloween away from its traditional roots. But it also demonstrated the holiday's remarkable adaptability and its role as a mirror of contemporary culture. Adult Halloween costuming emerged as a major trend in the late 20th century, with Halloween increasingly becoming an adult celebration as much as a children's holiday. Adult costume parties allow grown-ups to experience the same transformative play that children enjoy, providing a socially sanctioned opportunity to temporarily inhabit different identities. The phenomenon of adults dressing up for Halloween reflects broader cultural shifts toward valuing playfulness and creativity throughout the lifespan, rather than viewing them as solely childhood activities. The psychology of mask wearing specifically reveals fascinating insights into identity and behavior. Research has shown that masks can produce what psychologists call deindividuation, a psychological state where individual identity becomes less salient and people feel less personally responsible for their actions. This can lead to both positive and negative behaviors. On the positive side, masks can reduce social anxiety and allow people to express themselves more freely. On the negative side, the anonymity masks provide can sometimes encourage antisocial behavior, which may partly explain Halloween's historical association with mischief and pranks. Group costumes and coordinated costume themes tap into our fundamental need for social belonging and shared identity. When friends coordinate their costumes as a group theme, they're creating visible markers of their social bonds while also engaging in collaborative creativity. These group costumes have become increasingly elaborate and creative, ranging from simple matching themes to complex recreations of scenes from movies or clever visual puns that only work when the group is together. The question of cultural appropriation in Halloween costumes has become increasingly important in contemporary discussions about the holiday. Wearing costumes that caricature or stereotype other cultures' traditional dress raises serious concerns about respect and representation. This conversation reflects growing awareness that even playful costume choices can perpetuate harmful stereotypes or trivialize important cultural symbols. Many communities and institutions now encourage thoughtful costume selection that allows for creativity and transformation without crossing into cultural insensitivity. The therapeutic potential of costume wearing has been recognized in various psychological contexts. Drama therapy and similar approaches use costume and role play to help people explore different aspects of themselves, practice new behaviors, or work through emotional difficulties. Halloween provides a naturally occurring opportunity for this kind of transformative play without requiring a therapeutic context, potentially offering psychological benefits to participants who might never seek formal therapy. Costume creation itself represents a form of artistic expression and problem-solving. Whether sewing elaborate outfits from scratch, modifying thrift store finds, or cleverly assembling household items into recognizable characters, costume making engages creative thinking and manual skills. The rise of internet tutorials and social media sharing of costume ideas has created entire communities around Halloween costume creation, with people sharing techniques, offering inspiration, and celebrating each other's creativity. The economic impact of costume sales reflects Halloween's commercial significance. Americans spend billions of dollars annually on Halloween costumes, with the market including everything from inexpensive mass-produced options to high-end custom creations. This economic activity supports manufacturing, retail, and creative industries, while also reflecting the high value people place on the transformative experience costumes provide. Modern technology has added new dimensions to Halloween costumes. LED lights, electronic sound effects, animatronics, and augmented reality elements can be incorporated into contemporary costumes, creating effects that would have been impossible in earlier eras. These technological enhancements push costume creativity into new territories, while maintaining connection to the fundamental human desire to transform appearance and identity. Pull open your pantry door in late October, and you'll likely find bags of miniature candy bars, perhaps sorted by type or mixed together in preparation for trick-or-treaters. This simple domestic scene represents the culmination of decades of marketing genius, cultural evolution, and the transformation of Halloween into America's second-largest commercial holiday after Christmas. The story of how candy became inseparable from Halloween reveals fascinating insights into American consumer culture, food industry strategies, and the evolution of holiday traditions. In the early 20th century, Halloween treats were varied and largely homemade. Children might receive popcorn balls lovingly shaped and wrapped by neighbors, homemade cookies decorated with Halloween themes, candied apples with their glossy red shells and wooden stick handles, fresh fruit, nuts, or small toys. This variety reflected Halloween's community-oriented nature and the domestic skills valued in that era. Giving Halloween treats was an extension of neighborly relationships, a way of participating in community life. The shift toward commercially produced candy as the dominant Halloween treat happened gradually, driven by multiple factors. Candy manufacturers, always looking for ways to expand their markets, recognized Halloween's potential as a major candy-giving occasion. They began marketing specifically for Halloween in the 1950s, emphasizing the convenience of pre-wrapped, individually portioned candies. This marketing aligned perfectly with post-war suburban culture, where convenience and standardization increasingly shaped American life. The development of fun-size candy bars specifically targeted the Halloween market. These miniature versions of popular full-size bars provided an economical way for households to buy treats for potentially large numbers of trick-or-treaters, while also offering variety. The term fun size itself represents brilliant marketing, reframing smaller portions as more enjoyable rather than simply smaller. These individually wrapped miniatures became the gold standard for Halloween candy, their small size and wrapped packaging making them ideal for mass distribution to trick-or-treaters. Regional preferences in Halloween candy reveal interesting geographic and cultural variations. Some areas strongly prefer chocolate, while others favor fruity or sour candies. Certain regional brands maintain loyal followings in their areas of origin. These preferences reflect broader American food culture, while also creating opportunities for candy manufacturers to target specific markets with region-appropriate products. The Halloween candy hierarchy has become a widely recognized cultural phenomenon, with certain candies consistently ranking as more desirable than others. Full-size candy bars represent the pinnacle, while items like toothbrushes, pennies, or religious pamphlets are universally scorned as disappointing treats. This shared understanding of candy value creates common ground among trick-or-treaters and has spawned countless online discussions, ranking charts, and humorous commentary about optimal Halloween candy strategies. The urban legends about tampered Halloween candy, particularly the fear of poison or razor blades hidden in treats, significantly impacted Halloween traditions starting in the 1970s. While actual cases of stranger tampering with Halloween candy have been extremely rare and usually proven to be hoaxes, these fears led to widespread changes in how Halloween was celebrated. Parents began carefully inspecting their children's candy. Hospitals offered free X-ray services to check treats, and many communities organized alternative celebrations like trunk-or-treat events in supervised parking lots. These safety concerns accelerated the shift away from homemade treats toward commercially packaged candies. Pre-wrapped, factory-sealed products offered reassurance to worried parents, even though the actual risk from either homemade or commercial treats was minimal. This shift, while understandable from a psychological perspective, represented a loss of the more personal, community-oriented aspects of Halloween treat giving. The economics of Halloween candy purchasing has become its own phenomenon. Retailers begin stocking Halloween candy as early as August, and the strategy of buying, consuming, and rebuying Halloween candy before the actual holiday has become a widely acknowledged behavior. The post-Halloween candy sales, when remaining stock is heavily discounted, create another shopping opportunity that many people eagerly anticipate. Candy manufacturers have developed increasingly sophisticated Halloween-specific products. Limited edition flavors, Halloween-themed packaging, and seasonal varieties appear only during the autumn months, creating artificial scarcity that encourages purchases. These special editions often become collectibles or conversation pieces, adding another dimension to Halloween candy beyond simple consumption. The tradition of sorting and trading Halloween candy after trick-or-treating has become a significant part of the holiday experience for children. Dumping out the night's haul, categorizing it by type, negotiating trades with siblings or friends. These activities teach children about fairness, negotiation, and preferences, while also extending the pleasure of Halloween beyond the single night. Some families have developed elaborate systems for rationing Halloween candy, making it last for weeks or even months. Halloween candy has also become central to office culture and social interactions. Bowls of Halloween candy appear on office reception desks and in break rooms, providing easy opportunities for social bonding and small moments of indulgence throughout the season. The specific candies chosen for these communal bowls can become topics of discussion and even minor points of office culture identity. The health implications of Halloween candy consumption have generated ongoing discussions. Public health officials and dentists have expressed concerns about the large quantities of sugar children consume during Halloween season, while others argue that one night of candy collecting isn't significantly harmful within an otherwise balanced diet. Some communities have developed alternative trick-or-treating models that include non-food treats like toys, stickers, or coins, though these alternatives haven't gained widespread adoption. The environmental impact of Halloween candy, particularly its packaging, has drawn increasing attention in recent years. The individually wrapped nature of Halloween candy, while providing convenience and perceived safety, creates substantial waste. Some communities and individuals have begun exploring more environmentally conscious approaches to Halloween treats, though balancing environmental concerns with convenience and tradition remains challenging. While Halloween has become distinctly American in its modern form, the human impulse to honor the dead and mark the transition from harvest to winter exists across cultures worldwide. Exploring how different societies remember their departed and navigate this liminal time of year reveals both universal human concerns and beautiful cultural diversity. These celebrations remind us that Halloween's themes of death, memory, and the thin boundary between worlds resonate far beyond its Celtic and Christian roots. Perhaps the most widely known of these celebrations is Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead, celebrated primarily in Mexico and increasingly throughout Latin America and among Latino communities worldwide. Taking place on November 1st and 2nd, coinciding with the Catholic celebrations of All Saints and All Souls Days, Dia de los Muertos represents a unique fusion of indigenous Aztec traditions and Spanish Catholic influences. Unlike Halloween's playful spookiness, Dia de los Muertos approaches death with a mixture of reverence, celebration, and joyful remembrance. The preparation for Dia de los Muertos transforms homes and public spaces into elaborate tributes to the departed. Families construct ofrendas or altars, decorated with marigold flowers whose strong scent is believed to guide spirits home, photographs of deceased loved ones, candles, incense, and the favorite foods and drinks of those being honored. These aren't somber memorials, but vibrant, colorful celebrations that reflect the Mexican cultural view that death is a natural part of life's cycle rather than an ending to be feared. The iconic calaveras, decorated sugar skulls, embody the holiday's playful approach to mortality. These colorful skulls, often inscribed with names and decorated with bright icing flowers and designs, serve as both offerings and decorations. The tradition of calaveras extends to face painting, with people painting their faces as decorative skulls, transforming themselves into elegant, colorful skeletons. This practice shares Halloween's tradition of transformation and disguise, but with a different spiritual purpose. honoring death as part of life, rather than simply enjoying spooky aesthetics. Pan de Muerto, the special bread of the dead, becomes ubiquitous during this season. This slightly sweet bread, often decorated with bone-shaped pieces of dough and dusted with sugar, is both placed on ofrendas for the spirits to enjoy and shared among living family members. The act of preparing and sharing this bread creates connections across generations, with recipes and techniques passed down through families, each variation carrying its own family history. Cemeteries become sites of celebration during Dia de los Muertos, with families gathering at grave sites for all-night vigils. They clean and decorate graves, play music, tell stories about the deceased, and sometimes enjoy picnics in the cemetery. This practice of spending celebratory time in cemeteries might seem unusual to those unfamiliar with the tradition, but it reflects a cultural relationship with death that sees it as maintaining rather than severing connections with loved ones. In China and throughout much of East and Southeast Asia, the Hungry Ghost Festival serves similar functions of honoring ancestors and managing relationships with the spiritual world. Falling on the 15th day of the 7th lunar month, usually in August or September, this Buddhist and Taoist celebration involves offerings of food, burning of incense and joss paper, and performances intended to please the spirits. The belief holds that during this month, the gates of the afterlife open and spirits roam the earth, particularly those who died without proper burial or have no living descendants to honor them. The elaborate offerings prepared during the Hungry Ghost Festival include whole-cooked chickens, fresh fruits, cakes, and rice, arranged on tables outside homes and businesses. Joss paper, including paper money and representations of material goods, is burned to provide the spirits with what they need in the afterlife. These practices reflect complex beliefs about the afterlife, filial piety, and the continuing relationships between living and dead family members. Japan's Aben Festival, celebrated in mid-August in most regions, combines Buddhist customs with uniquely Japanese traditions to honor ancestral spirits. Families return to their ancestral homes, clean family graves, and prepare special foods. The festival includes the tradition of lighting lanterns to guide spirits home at the beginning of Aben and floating lanterns on rivers, or the sea to guide them back to the afterlife at the festival's end. The sight of hundreds of floating lanterns drifting on water creates scenes of extraordinary beauty while serving deep spiritual purposes. The Bon Odori, traditional dances performed during Aben, vary by region, but share the purpose of welcoming and entertaining ancestral spirits. These community dances, performed in circles around temporary stages or towers, create opportunities for social bonding while honoring the dead. The combination of solemn remembrance and joyful celebration characterizes Aben, much as it does Dia de los Muertos. In parts of Europe, particularly in Catholic countries, All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day are observed with church services, cemetery visits, and family gatherings. In Poland, the tradition of lighting candles on graves creates spectacular displays, with cemeteries glowing with millions of candles on the evening of November 1st. This beautiful tradition transforms cemeteries into seas of light, each small flame representing remembrance and love for a departed soul. The Philippines' celebration of Undas combines Catholic traditions with local customs, creating extended family gatherings at cemeteries. Families bring elaborate meals to share at grave sites, sometimes staying overnight in what becomes a community-wide celebration. Despite the setting and purpose, these gatherings often have a festive atmosphere, with children playing, adults catching up, and entire communities coming together in spaces usually associated with solemnity. These varied celebrations of the dead share common themes despite their cultural differences. They all mark temporal thresholds, times when the boundary between the living and dead is understood to be more permeable. They involve offerings of food and light to the departed. They create opportunities for families to gather and strengthen bonds. And they approach death not with pure dread, but with a mixture of respect, remembrance, and even celebration. The global nature of these death-honoring traditions suggests something fundamental about human psychology and culture. Across vastly different societies, people have independently developed similar practices, setting aside special times to remember the dead, believing these times involve spiritual presence, using food and light as offerings, and combining solemnity with celebration. These commonalities hint at universal human needs to maintain connections with departed loved ones, and to periodically confront mortality in ritual contexts. The line of people stretches around the building, their excited chatter punctuated by screams from inside. Strobe lights flash through blackened windows. A soundscape of creaking doors, chainsaws, and ominous music drifts into the cool October night. Welcome to the modern haunted house, a Halloween tradition that has evolved from simple, home-based scares into a multi-million-dollar entertainment industry that combines theater, technology, and psychology to create experiences that terrify and delight millions of people annually. The concept of the haunted house has ancient roots in the human fascination with supposedly supernatural locations. Genuine haunted house stories, tales of buildings inhabited by ghosts or spirits, appear in virtually every culture's folklore. But the commercialization of haunted attractions for entertainment purposes is a relatively recent development, emerging primarily in the 20th century and exploding in popularity over recent decades. Early haunted attractions were often simple affairs. A spooky basement set up in someone's home, volunteers jumping out from behind sheets, perhaps some creaky sound effects. These amateur haunts served neighborhood children and charged little or nothing for admission. They represented Halloween's community spirit, with neighbors creating entertainment for local kids as part of the seasonal celebration. The evolution of haunted attractions into professional entertainment began in earnest in the 1970s and accelerated dramatically in subsequent decades. Theme parks began offering seasonal Halloween events with elaborate haunted attractions. Entrepreneurial individuals and groups started operating professional haunted houses, charging admission and competing to create increasingly frightening and impressive experiences. What began as seasonal fun evolved into serious business. Modern professional haunted attractions employ sophisticated techniques to maximize fear and entertainment. Set designers create elaborate, detailed environments that tell stories and establish atmosphere. Lighting designers use darkness, shadows, and strategic illumination to control what visitors see and when they see it. Sound designers create immersive audio environments that keep visitors on edge even during moments of relative calm. And scare actors, the performers who inhabit these spaces, use training in timing, characterization, and improvisation to tailor their scares to each group of visitors. The psychology of haunted house design involves carefully orchestrated tension and release. Designers understand that constant assault on the senses becomes numbing, so effective haunts incorporate pacing, building tension gradually before major scares, then providing brief respites before building tension again. The best haunted attractions tell stories, even if those stories are simple or implied, because narrative structure helps visitors make sense of their fear experience and creates more memorable events. The rise of extreme haunts in recent years has pushed the boundaries of acceptable fear entertainment. These attractions might require participants to sign waivers, submit to physical contact from actors, endure being isolated or bound, or experience simulated torture scenarios. While controversial, these extreme experiences appeal to thrill seekers looking for more intense experiences than traditional haunted houses provide. They raise interesting questions about where entertainment ends and genuine distress begins. Safety considerations in haunted attractions have become increasingly important as the industry has professionalized. Fire codes, emergency lighting, clearly marked exits, and trained staff help ensure that while visitors feel scared, they're never in actual danger. The best professional haunts maintain careful balances between creating genuine fear responses and maintaining absolute safety for their guests. The economic impact of the haunted attraction industry has grown substantially. Major professional haunts can generate millions of dollars in revenue during their brief seasonal operating windows. They employ hundreds of seasonal workers, from actors to makeup artists to technical staff. Entire supply chains have developed to serve the industry, with companies specializing in Halloween props, special effects, animatronics, and other haunted house essentials. Home haunts, amateur haunted attractions run from residential properties, maintain the community spirit of earlier Halloween traditions, while often achieving impressive levels of sophistication. Homeowners invest thousands of dollars and countless hours creating elaborate displays and walkthrough experiences. These home haunters form supportive communities, sharing techniques and celebrating each other's creativity, all while providing free entertainment for neighborhood trick-or-treaters. The theatricality of haunted attractions has created career opportunities for creative professionals. Actors, set designers, makeup artists, sound designers, and special effects specialists find seasonal work in haunted attractions, sometimes using these positions to develop skills and make connections that lead to other entertainment industry work. Some haunted attraction professionals have built entire careers around creating scary seasonal entertainment. The social media age has transformed how people interact with haunted attractions. Visitors share their experiences online, creating word-of-mouth marketing that can make or break attractions. Haunts compete not just to scare visitors, but to create shareable moments, scenes or scares so memorable that people will photograph them or talk about them online. This has led to increased emphasis on visual spectacle, alongside traditional scare tactics. Haunted attractions have also become testing grounds for new entertainment technologies. Virtual reality, augmented reality, projection mapping, and other cutting-edge technologies find their way into haunted houses, where the darkness and willingness of visitors to suspend disbelief create ideal environments for experimentation. Some of these innovations eventually migrate to other entertainment venues, making haunted houses unlikely incubators for entertainment technology advancement. The communal aspect of visiting haunted attractions contributes significantly to their appeal. Going to a haunted house with friends creates shared experiences and memories. The mixture of genuine fear and recognized safety allows people to experience vulnerability while remaining protected, strengthening social bonds. Post-haunt discussions, where groups recount which parts scared them most or debate the effectiveness of various elements, extend the entertainment beyond the actual visit. Charity haunts operated by nonprofit organizations as fundraisers demonstrate Halloween's continuing community connections. These attractions, often staffed entirely by volunteers, raise money for various causes while providing entertainment. They maintain haunted attractions' roots in community participation and seasonal celebration, rather than purely commercial entertainment. The future of haunted attractions likely involves continued technological advancement, more sophisticated storytelling, and greater variety in fear experiences. As the industry matures, it develops clearer standards, better safety practices, and more refined understanding of what creates effective scary entertainment. Yet even the most high-tech modern haunt maintains connection to ancient human fascinations with fear, death, and the supernatural. As the jack-o'-lanterns flicker out and the last trick-or-treaters head home, we've journeyed together through centuries of Halloween history, from sacred Celtic fires to suburban doorsteps, from genuine spiritual concerns to playful scares, from ancient divination to modern candy commerce. We've discovered that this beloved holiday represents layers upon layers of human tradition. each generation adding new meanings while maintaining connections to ancient practices. Halloween persists because it speaks to something fundamental in human nature: our need to confront mortality in safe ways, our desire to transform ourselves through costume and play, our enjoyment of controlled fear, and our deep connections to the cycles of seasons and the memories of those who came before us. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the misty origins and candy-coated present of Halloween. If you're already drifting off, then our mission is complete. But if you're still awake, perhaps another deep dive will carry you gently into slumber. Until we meet again in these quiet hours, may your dreams be filled with gentle ghosts and friendly spirits. And may you always find magic in the changing seasons and joy in traditions both ancient and new.